Bulls trample over Leinster on their way to the URC final. My name is Mark. Let's talk rugby. Well, I hate to say I told you so, but I guess I can't really say that because I did back Leinster in my preview, but I did say that if the game was tight, around about 55, 60 minutes, the Bulls were going to win the game, and that's what happened. You know, I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's just to me, it's just so obvious that this Leinster bench has no experience in a Leinster shirt winning tight games. And as I said in the preview, that's not what they're for. They're there for, to basically catch the other team overexerting themselves and help Leinster to pull away. And if Leinster had been a couple of scores up around that time when those guys come on, maybe that's what they would have done. But they didn't. They come on when the game was pretty much on a knife edge, and it was always the Bulls edging in front a little bit. Leinster have to dig something out, and this bench, and also when the rest of the Leinster team who are on there start to tire, they're just not able to do it for whatever reason, whether it's a mental thing or it's like a fitness thing, or it's just, the fact that the guys who are coming off the bench in these big games are used to, through the rest of the URC season, actually starting games. These guys only really come off the bench, like, in Champions Cup games or something like that, and the odd Champions Cup game. So whatever it is, it's just not working for Leinster, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's get into the game itself. So Bulls, right at the start, hassling Leinster when they had possession and just never letting them settle at all. Always that threat there, whether it was like getting in their passing lines, getting in their lie line, just making it very difficult to spot where the support was, getting in there and the breakdown, etc. And also the kicking game was pinning Leinster in their own half. I thought the Bulls' kicking game was far superior to Leinster's. Leinster's always seemed like it was just a response to what the Bulls were doing. It never felt like there was a strategy for Leinster. And we'll talk a little bit again about that later. But I think there's probably another video coming about what changes Leinster need to make. But there's also the video that I promised about basically, like, I have a video that I'm working on that basically tells you why this happens, because teams do it to Leinster all the time, which has to be a really good team to make it work the way that the Bulls did. So we'll have that video first, which is going to come in the off season now, because again, I want to make sure that it's right, but it will kind of go through what I've seen kind of step by step, where teams, really put Leinster under pressure, and then how they turn that bit of pressure that, all teams try to do against them, but how the successful teams turn that into wins. But let's go on from here. So Bulls, they're looking, for space to kick into, and really great crossfield kick from Nauru. Thought he was absolutely excellent today. That guy is just pure class. And, I love watching him. Some people say you shouldn't be admiring opposition players, but I can't help it. Like, if somebody is that good, it's just enjoy to watch really good rugby, even if your team are on the wrong end of it. But he finds low on the wing, and that gets his team on the front foot. The Bulls looking more comfortable in possession, certainly compared to Leinster. Then line-out ball is clean early on because Leinster deciding not to compete. They're worried about that maul, so they're keeping the guys on the ground ready, to halt the maul. And they have some success there early on, but it also means that the Bulls know that they have the option now to go off the top as well, because they're pretty sure Leinster aren't going to compete in too many lineouts, and that's kind of giving them another kind of way to attack this Leinster team as well. Bulls then from here, as they're also putting pressure on in the scrum. They were definitely the better of the two teams in the scrum for pretty much the whole game. Gibson Park then, though, does really well. He breaks off the back of a retreating scrum. He has to go in there and dig the ball out, and he breaks down the wing and puts in a lovely chip over the top, and it bounces just short of line and just goes out the right side of the flag. But then the Bulls managed to clear it, and they really kept it cool there. No panic just because they're on their own line. Leinster did try and go up and compete, but it wasn't really, it was kind of a half-hearted effort, really. One of those where, the guy is head and shoulders above his opposition when he's claimed the ball. But Bulls really did kept it cool, didn't, allow themselves to kind of get trapped in their own 22. Houston then tries a long-range drop goal, which goes left and wide, but, Bulls, they're controlling the game early on. Leroux and Houston's their cross kicks causing Leinster all sorts of problems as well. And the Bulls' pressure then forces a knock on. Leinster trying to move the ball, and then the Bulls strike off the scrum. So Hanekom makes good ground off the back of the scrum. He's, again, I talked about it before the game, like these guys, maybe they're not household names, but they're really good players. And if you let them, like, if they get a bit ahead of steam up, like, and they're feeling confident against you, they're gonna just look world class against you. And that's what they did. Hanekom was excellent today. He gets great meters. Then Houston with a skip pass out to Leroux, and then Leroux kind of fixes the defense and puts Devin Williams over in the corner for the opening try, except it's not the opening try because they have a TMO check, and Van Staden took Ross Byrne out off the ball, and it's a penalty to Leinster. Bit of let off to Leinster though. That was a real warning shot to Leinster that the Bulls can create and exploit space against them. Leinster then work it forward after the penalty. Low, he's got Jimmy O'Brien outside him, and he goes to the pass, but there's a deliberate knock on from Peterson. He goes to the bin. Leinster then go to the corner from the penalty. They work it in field. It's a bit clunky. The ball goes to ground from Sheehan, but then they do manage to suck in the Bulls' defence, and then they go wide, and Byrne puts Low over to score in the corner. Byrne then converts from the touchline for 7 points to 0. But even with the score there, Leinster still didn't look like the old kind of slick machine. And after that, then the next period is basically, the yellow card period is a tale of two kicks. First, you have Leinster, they're turning the screw. It looks like, they're putting that extra, or putting pressure on with an extra man, and they're pinning the Bulls in their own half. It looks like maybe this is a chance now for Leinster to maybe stretch out the lead and change the momentum of the game and the whole dynamics of the game. And Jimmy O'Brien kicks out on the full. It wasn't even close. And suddenly the Bulls now have momentum instead. And shortly after that, then Leroux with a just absolutely peach, a superb 50-22. Bulls then claim it from the line out. They work it in field. They're, kind of forwards have it for a bit. They work it into the shadows of the post. Then Houston picks a superb line, comes at pace, and then over the line to score. And then that's converted, and we're at 7 points all from there. Then we have a knock on from Larmer, and that gives the Bulls a scrum in the Leinster half, and they win a penalty at the scrum as well. And then Houston just strokes it between the posts for 10-7, and it's half time, and Bulls definitely the better team. Into the second half then, early on in the half, the Bulls, to go to that width where they know, there's always space against Leinster, and Worcester breaks down the wing, he kicks it back in field. Peterson gets there first to ground it. We do have a TMO check just to make sure he's not offside. He's fine, and it tries awarded. Houston converts for 70 points to 7, and Leinster now are in real trouble. Leinster then, they find some space out wide themselves. O'Brien, Lowe and Larmer all combining, but then there's a great covering tackle from Peterson that halts their momentum. And one of the significant things there as well is Leinster found the space, but unlike the Bulls, who they got to the space and then they were in behind, the Bulls had those players flooding over. And last year, even before Leinster changed their defensive system, you would have seen that from Leinster too, that their scramble was probably the best part of the defence. Now they've changed it where they're more aggressive in the defence, which means that there's less players there for a scramble as well, hanging out in the back. But the Bulls did really well, especially Peterson. I thought his reaction to getting a yellow card is like coming on and doing that, and then what he does later on in the game as well, just like superb. That's the way you want a player to respond to something like that. But from here then they get a penalty because Hanekom has come in from the side, putting a lot of pressure on the Bulls now. They're winning a couple of penalties. They decide they're going to tap one. Sheehan goes route one. And just before we talk about that as well, we saw last year where Leinster brought this kind of variation to their tap penalties, and this year it's just gone. This year, almost every tap you've seen is basically Sheehan taps it and runs at the line, and you're like, well, he's a great player. Maybe he's going to get over, but there's no disguise on it at all. He goes route one, then they recycle it, and Doris does get over the score. So it was still a well-worked try, and it was obviously a set move to suck in the defence around Sheehan, and then Doris goes there, he's got his latches, and over he goes. So a decent score there, but more conventional than maybe we would expect from a Leinster taps, given what they were working on last year. It's converted then for 17 points to 14. LaRue then, he has to go off after a late hit from Baird. And I thought both sides, there was a bit of niggling there, and the referee never really, he did speak to the two captains and say, listen, I can see what's happening, boys, and you need to get your boys to calm down. But didn't really do much more than that. So Lowe then produces a bit of magic. That's James Lowe, given that there's a few on either side, but he chips over the defence and gathers on the run, and his break gets Leinster deep into Bulls territory. Then Hanekom is pinged for offside. Byrne squares it up from the tee, 7-all. Not long after then, McCarthy, I think he was playing on the ground. He was doing a whole, he was lining the way. He was playing on the ground. He was doing a few other things. That was because he claimed a kick in the air, and then Bulls just drove over and isolated him with really good response from them. And then penalty, so Houston slots up for 20 points to 17. Then Van der Merwe is off his feet, so Byrne squares us up again at 20 points all. But crucially, Leinster in that period, they never got themselves that little bit ahead, and that's what I was expecting really when it was tight. And we saw the same in the Champions Cup final. We've seen it in other tight games as well with Leinster, that they get back to parity or back within a couple of points, but then the other team can pull away, and Leinster just don't have that final response that they need. And so from here then, the Bulls back in the Leinster half. Houston has a drop goal attempt, charged down. Luckily it breaks for the Bulls because there were 3 players in attendance around him, and had it broken for one of them, Leinster would have been away under the post from halfway, with 3 players in behind, but it breaks for Bulls players. And I think we talk about the bounce of a ball, but I think the Bulls deserve it given the performance. It would have been cruel if it had have bounced up into a Leinster hand. It wouldn't have been a fitting end to the game, honestly, even as a Leinster fan. But shortly after that then, Papier puts in a really sweet box kick. Peterson beats Frawley in the air, and it just strides over to score. Conversions misses, 25 points to 20. Leinster now have to respond, but much of the next period is played between kind of the 10-metre lines. Then Leinster can see the penalty with 3 minutes to go. Houston calls for the tee, use up every second as he should, and the kick drifts wide. Leinster now have to run it from their, pretty much their own half, their own line, but Bulls pen them in their own 22 before turning over, getting it off for a full-time score of 25 points to 20, and an absolutely deserved win for the Bulls. We're now going to have a quick look at the stats, and then we'll talk about each of the teams. So on attack, Bulls 3 tries to 2, and they certainly looked the more inventive of the two sides today. Possession 47 to 53, but Leinster didn't do much with the possession that they had. I thought, Gibson Park, he peaked really early in the season, but I thought he was poor today. It was obviously a strategy to go for box kicks, but they weren't really getting much out of the box kicks from there. And it really felt like they needed someone to decide to change up the strategy, and they didn't do it, and therefore they spent a lot of the time with their possession just kind of shuffling the ball around between them and then box kicking to the Bulls, who would then put in a superb kick back. Clean breaks then 13-8, again just shows the cutting edge that the Bulls had over Leinster, especially when you look at defenders beaten 21-20, which means it was close on defenders beaten, but the Bulls got 5 more clean breaks out of theirs. Offloads then 9 for the Bulls, 12 for Leinster. Defence territory 55% to 45. So again, the Bulls playing much of the game in the right area of the field. Number of tackles 160 to 123, and missed tackles 20 to 21. Tackle success 89% for the Bulls is fairly decent for a semi-final. 85 for Leinster is okay for them. It's kind of a pass mark for Leinster. Turnovers 1 then, 5 for the Bulls and 2 for Leinster, and the Bulls winning some crucial turnovers as well, halting momentum from Leinster or regaining it themselves as well with those. Kicking then, kicks retained 7 each, but it really felt like the Bulls, when they retained the kicks, there was danger, whereas Leinster, when they retained the kicks, it was all about then there was nothing on the back of that. It was what can we do from here in terms of we've now got to reset and work from here, whereas the Bulls are just switched on, and you saw that with the Peterson try, like just catches it and then he's in behind. Penalties conceded then 8 for the Bulls and 4 for Leinster. So Leinster staying on the right side of the referee, but again, not enough kind of pressure from their side on the Bulls in terms of forcing penalties closer to the line, etc. Apart from one period where they got that Doris try. Then for individual players, Peterson with 2 tries, absolutely amazing. Coming into the team with no Kanan Moody and no Curtly Aronsa, and he comes in and just shines. Successful carries then. Hanekom for the Bulls, talked about it before, absolutely outstanding. Doris for Leinster, 11 carries from him. Some good periods for him, certainly, like made a lot of good meters, but there were times when the Bulls just targeted him. They put 2 men in and stopped him dead, and then they could isolate him and get over the ball as well. Clean breaks 3 for Hanekom and 2 for Lowe. Again, 2 of the standout players in the game, and it keeps going for Hanekom. Defenders beaten 6 to Reinberg's 4. Meters made 76 to James Lowe's 101, and offloads 3 to Henshaw's 2. So Hanekom basically on that side, filling most of the stats for individual stuff. On defense then, guess who has the most number of tackles for the Bulls? Do we even have to say his name? Cameron Hanekom, 18. Josh Van der Fleer with 15 for Leinster. So like Hanekom, just amazing. And then who has the most turnovers? Hanekom with 2, of course. So the guy was just outstanding today. Absolutely brilliant, and I'm delighted for him as well, because he's someone that I've admired. He's one of those players again that is kind of he reminds me kind of a Reece Ruddock type player who has the potential to be right up there, kind of in the Springboks or in the Ireland team or whatever, and has the ability to do that, but a lot of times it's overlooked, and it's great to see him shining in the semi-final the way he did. Now from here, let's talk about the teams themselves. So Leinster, they produce a performance that we've seen all too often really from this team in the last few seasons. Never really looked settled in the game. Islands of quality in a sea of mediocrity is the best way for I think I can describe their performance. And those moments of quality, keeping them in the game, but never look like they're going to come back over the top of the Bulls in this one. Set piece struggled. Most of their kicking was in response to the Bulls and didn't seem to have a strategy of their own in that regard. Attack often looks stilted, and like they can't defend the wide channels at all, and they can't protect the ball when the opposition go after the breakdown either. And last year it looked like they were maybe a tweak or 2 away from the old Leinster. Now it feels like major changes are needed for that team, honestly. Onto the Bulls then. They're absolutely fantastic. They identified space and they got the ball there by any means necessary. They kept Leinster on the back foot. They went, after their set piece, and they brought that blend of power and subtlety that they do so well. Fully deserved win for them in this game. And the way they responded to the yellow card as well, I thought was superb. They took their chances well, and they never let up either. They never took the pressure off Leinster, and now they made their second final. The question is, can they finally lift the trophy?